have 9,000 new books. You know how much 9,000 is? Right? All right.
Hi, I'm Dr. Amanda Sobermasana, principal here at Longfellow Elementary in Compton, California. Today we are excited to partner with Access Books and the Webster Foundation for a complete library renovation. We have over 9,000 books coming in today, 2 large murals, and a complete mural renovation inside as well. Prior to the renovation today, we had a lot of empty shelves, tons of shelves, but mostly empty shelves. A lot of the material in the books that were presented to students weren't relevant to the students that we serve. And so with the donation from our Webster Foundation, we were able to get culturally relevant books into the hands of our students.
One little girl, she told me this is her first time being in a library, like checking out a book. Well, this is very important.
Since the first time I've been here, I never knew there was a library, and now that I know, I'm probably going to come here every day.
We really wanted to do a Representation Matters theme. I wanted students of color to be able to see themselves in the books and on the walls and make reading more relevant to them.
Adding art to the school really is such a treat for the kids. They get so excited. It adds a lot of color and life, things that are inspiring, images that maybe they've never seen before. So it's really important to bring the art into the schools and continue to help our children learn and grow.
You guys came here and made it an actual library. Before then, it was just this bare bones room. Yeah, so it's a huge difference. This is the coolest place in the school to me.
Thank you,
Good evening. I'm Donna Wares, and I'd like to welcome you to the LA Times Book Club. Thank you all for being here, and I'd like to give us a special shout out to Gil and the crew here. This is our first time in a very long time back in Hollywood at the historic Montblanc Theater, which is just an amazing venue. So thank you for having us back, and thank you all for joining us. It's really exciting. So I wanted to start this evening by asking all of you a question. I'd like to know, how many of you have seen Dirty Dancing at least one time? Raise your hands, please. Okay. So how many of you have seen it at least 5 times? Okay, more than 10 times. Okay, there's some of us, huh? Or are you one of those super fans like my colleague, Yvonne Villarreal, who's watching here on the live stream tonight? She has seen Dirty Dancing more than 100 times. Any other super fans out there? Okay, I knew that this was going to be a crowd that really liked to shake their maracas, and I'm so glad that you're all here with us. Our tonight's guest, of course, is Jennifer Gray. She brought Baby Houseman to life on screen, and her new memoir shows us the making and the near unmaking of the ultimate summer movie. In Out of the Corner, Jennifer reveals that creating this low-budget coming-of-age story seemed almost doomed from the start. The early script was a mess. The two lead actors didn't really get along. The mosquitoes nearly ate her alive during the filming. And the studio worried that the censors would kill the title because Dirty Dancing in 1987 sounded like porn. But instead, this rom-com set in New York's Borscht Belt exploded. It has become an iconic and endlessly quotable hit with soundtrack that topped the charts too. And 35 years later, Baby Houseman is more relevant than ever. Tonight, Jennifer Grey will be in conversation with Time's senior entertainment writer, Amy Kaufman, and she's the best-selling author of Bachelor Nation. And we're going to meet both of them very soon, in just a minute. But first, let's take a little schlep back in time to Kellerman's.
Hi, everybody, this is your cousin Brucey. Whoa, our summer romances are in full bloom, and everybody but everybody's in love. So, cousins, here's a great song from the Four Seasons.
Big girls won't cry. Big girls won't cry.
That was the summer of 1963, when everybody called me baby, and it didn't occur to me to mind.
They don't cry.
That was before President Kennedy was shot, before the Beatles came, when I couldn't wait to join the Peace Corps, and I thought I'd never find a guy as great as my dad.
I wonder why. Silly boy. Told my girl we had to break
That was the summer we went to Kellerman's.
that she would call my phone. Silly boy. When she said, to my surprise, big girls don't cry.
Ping pong in the West Arcade. Softball on the East Diamond. All you Sandy Kopaxes, get out there. Complimentary dance lessons in the gazebo. In the ballroom starting in 10 minutes. A gym rummy clinic.
I should have brought those coral shoes.
Simon says
You said I was thinking too much.
Well, sweetheart, you brought 10 pairs.
But the coral shoes match that dress.
This is not a tragedy. A tragedy is three men trapped in a mine or police dogs used in Birmingham.
Monks burning themselves in protest.
Butt out, baby.
Okay, we got horseshoes on the sidewalk in 15 minutes. We've got Splish Dash, the water class down by the lake. We have the still life art class. We got volleyball and croquet. For you older folks, we got sax.
And now, please join me in welcoming Jennifer Grey and Amy Kaufman to the LA Times Book Club stage.
Thank you all. Thank you, Donna. Thank you for being here, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, LA Times.
Yeah.
So nice. Hi, guys. You all made it out in the heat and the traffic for book club.
Yes.
Yes.
Who's had a chance to read so far? Okay. It's great, right? I'm excited to dive in.
No, it sucks. What are you going to say?
I wouldn't lie. I wouldn't do this if I thought it was terrible. Okay, so let's just start with the basics. When is the first moment you considered, I should write a memoir? I think I have that in me.
I think about 10 years ago. It was right after Dancing with the Stars. My agent said, someone's interested and want to introduce you, and that's when I met Danny Shapiro through my friend, through Jamie Lee Curtis, and she had said, I said, I was asked to do this, and I'm so confused. I barely finished high school, I never went to college, I've never taken a course, and they say I should have a ghostwriter, and it doesn't feel right. And the person was a lovely writer and a lovely person, I couldn't do it.
Oh,
And
you met with a ghostwriter?
I met with a ghostwriter, and I thought, okay, this is how I have to do it because I'm not capable of doing it myself. And I just assumed. Nobody told me I was. And then I remember having lunch with Danny Shapiro.
That's a fellow writer.
Yes, a friend of both of ours who's a wonderful, wonderful writer. and very memoir-centric. And she's written so many memoirs, and you probably most recently heard about inheritance. And she's written, like, it's funny, you think, how many times can one write a memoir? But I think that more is being revealed throughout your life. And every time you look back at it, you might have a different perspective through a different lens of what you've lived through. And so Danny said to me, she said, because I would write, and then my version of it, and say, well, this is what I've been writing. And she said, you need to write this yourself. And because I trust her, and she wasn't that good a friend that she would have lied to me, and she was so serious when she said, you can do this. And I think her belief in me made me try. And then I started, and what I noticed was I could not figure out how to tell my story, because I knew that my story involved a lot of bold-faced names, and that would be super sexy to editors or the rags, or what do you call the rags?
Tabloids,
Tabloids. And I just thought, I don't want to do that. It's not me. And so I thought, you know what? I don't know how to tell my story because I have to tell the truth, and it's too tricky. And so I just bagged it. And I decided that it wasn't for me, and I put it away for like 10 years or 8 years.
Oh, wow.
And then someone came to me, one of my agents said, they're interested in you writing a book. And I was like, a Dirty Dancing book? I don't want to write a Dirty Dancing book.
Is that how they pitched it to you?
No, but I knew.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of like, what are they going to, I don't know. I just assumed that it would be that kind of a book. And I wasn't a fan of those kinds of books. And I don't know, hadn't read a lot of memoir at that time.
Yeah.
And if I couldn't write open the Andre Agassi book, I didn't want to write it. Like, I just thought, that's a memoir, you know? And so often it's something more sordid or kind of low energy, you know? And so I thought, I'll tell you what, let me think about it, because I know that I'm known for nobody puts baby in a corner. So maybe I could look at my life, because there are ways in which I have felt put in a corner, many times actually. And I went, oh, that's so wrong to be known for that and to actually not be able to live up to that last moment of when Patrick Swayze says that to me. I of all people should know it. Should know that what that means and to be able to walk the walk. So then I started to look at my life through the lens of in the corner, out of the corner, in the corner, out of the corner. And then I went, wait a minute. All these times I thought I had been put in the corner, I had put myself in the corner, or I allowed people to put me in the corner. And then I realized, well, if I did that, then I could take myself out, and then I got interested. That's my long answer to that question.
So was that the point at which you describe having like a chest full of journals from when you were a teenager on. Is that when you delved into those?
I had never, journals are a thing that I don't know about you guys, but I've always written them never to open them again. It's just kind of like, okay, it's in the vault, it happened, what do you sit around reading your journals? That would be, I don't know, I guess you could do that. Well, I did. And when I did, I was quite surprised because I really was 14 when I started writing till I was 41, which is when I moved in with my now ex-husband, but at the time I'd been single till then. And so once I was living with someone, I just didn't believe that they wouldn't get read, so I just stopped. But between those years, I wrote when I was upset, I wrote when I was heartbroken, I wrote when I was on airplanes because there was nothing else to do.
That's prime journal writing time,
right?
Airplanes.
And also because there were no cell phones back in the day. There were no cell phones, and so if you had no one to talk to, you couldn't call people in the middle of it. Just was different. You couldn't text, so I would just write to myself. And so looking back at them, at 60 years old, I look back at myself at 14, and I just thought I would be like, oh, she was so cute. Well, she was cute, but she was really not that different from me now.
Huh.
And that was shocking.
What were the similarities?
I just thought I'd be more mature. I thought that I would be so different, and I was super mature as a little girl and as a kid, And I guess it just stopped there, and I just, got wiser and had more experiences, but I could feel my essence. My voice was very much like my voice now. And how I expressed myself was almost the same as me now, which I think is an interesting, I'd be really curious if you guys, when we do Q&A, I would love to hear if any of you have ever read your old journals, if you felt that way, because I don't think a lot of, studies have been done on this subject, but.
The next Jennifer Gray-led scientific journal
I could publish some of these as is. They're not Anne Frank, okay? I am talking about really, really lightweight stuff, but at the time it felt like it was, very end of my world.
So did you end up calling upon a lot of them for reference, or no?
I called upon the ones where I needed to get the details of the breakup, because I was always writing when there was a new thing, a breakup. It's always like those critical moments, those inciting incidents. So it's almost like there are very few pages where it's just, so this is what happened today. It's mostly like, oh my God, it's very emotional, very dramatic.
So you've said in interviews that writing this memoir was the biggest challenge of your life. Do you mean that in the sense that exactly what you're talking about, sort of mining all of those experiences was difficult, or was it actually the writing process that challenged you?
I've gone through actually probably harder things, but as the idea of not knowing what I'm doing at all, like my editor would say to me, that's not a sentence, Jennifer, and I'd be like, it is to me. Like I didn't have a lot of basic grammar, and I just didn't understand structure. I just knew how to dump out my story, and then I noticed there was a lot that I didn't remember. Like I had so few childhood memories, and I thought, that's weird. And then I would start to research, wow, does anyone not have childhood memories? What does this mean? And it wasn't that I'd had such obvious trauma, but something was going on where I just don't remember. So I would take every single thing I could remember and get it out, and then I would notice that my memory would kind of, once I had done due diligence of really trying to excavate every possible nuance, it was usually synesthetic. It was usually very sensory. It was the smell, the texture. I could look at a photograph and remember the texture of a dress, the trim on the dress, or the corduroy. I could remember things like that, but I couldn't remember a scene. And you guys probably know this, but I didn't know that when you write, you can't tell, you have to show. And so you have to show scenes. And I was like, well, I don't have any scenes. And so then I would just start with what I didn't remember. And then kind of curiously meander without kind of like stumbling in the murk, which I find allows the unconscious to bring things to you because you're not really driving with a goal. It's not as goal-oriented, it's more kind of circular and letting myself be lost, letting myself not remember. And then I would notice that it was almost like the kimono would get opened a little more. And I'd be like, oh, okay. Okay, I do remember that. And then the more I remembered, the more was shown to me. And then I just tried to stay in the, I don't know how to do this. And I am just doing one story at a time or 1 hour or just putting in the time. And then it just started to show itself to me.
Yeah.
Because I really didn't know what the book was about when I started. And so for me, it was a very impactful, and it's a very important thing for me that I've done for myself, but I wish they would teach it in school. I wish they would teach English with memoir so that students could be known by their teachers and known by their classmates, and also be able to reflect or ask their parents and to see the kind of these concentric patterns of where they came from and the ways we inherit their history and their trauma and their parents and the generational trauma that's passed down. And not only the trauma, but also the amazing parts, you know, and where you get your stuff.
Yep.
And to recognize that it's, of course, it's so understandable that as opposed to holding yourself to some impossible standard, just being more curious.
I think all of, you know, the classes that I took as a younger woman, writing about yourself it led me to this job, and I think it's so essential. I agree with you, that it could be taught more efficiently in schools.
But like, why are people, like how we tell our stories is very, it gives us a lot of chemicals. If you tell a story that how badly you were treated or how wonderful this was or whatever, instead of not knowing and taking the judgment out of it, just of like, maybe it was good, maybe it was bad, I don't know, but it happened. And what if everybody that I've ever met, have ever come in contact with, they're all doing their very, very best. I do believe that everyone is doing their very best, and their very best can change, and so can yours.
So what was in this excavation process, was there a story that you realized you had been telling about yourself all these years that was not true?
Yeah, there were many. There were stories that I think either had been passed down to me, and I just assumed that they were told to me, and they become lore. They become the family story. They become, they're not vetted. They're not questioned, and there's no one like poking holes and checking. There's no fact checking. And I realized that I was told this, but what if it's not the whole story?
So what would one of those have been?
Well, I think that it usually comes down to what I call black and white thinking, or living in the gray, which was one of my possible titles for a moment, which was embracing the gray, and then they thought it was about getting older or getting gray hair or something. I was like, I'm not doing that. But anyway, so I was thinking that just the idea of taking the very didactic, the good and bad things happen, right? And we just don't know if they're good or bad. We can say like, oh, I didn't love that, or that was really hard. But the most powerful things that happened to me that were usually very, very, very hard or very, very devastating, and that it moves the needle. And that it actually, it's like the heat has to be turned up really high to forge metal. Iron and steel, what it takes is enormous heat. And heat of that nature is really nothing that any of us seek out necessarily.
Right.
But when you look back on it and you realize what a gift these shaping moments have been.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. I mean, so one of those moments may have been, you start the book, right off the bat, you go into talking about the nose job that you had that has been sort of a controversial subject in the media for years, right? Why did you make that decision to just jump right in?
I would say that I worked with this freelance editor named Barbara Jones, and I credit her completely with that idea. And I knew, and I think that, like she says, listen, you wrote every word of this book. I said, yeah, but you are the one who knew how to start it off with a bang. Because it was this story that I felt was too important to the world for whatever reason. And I was hurt by it and felt misunderstood. And I felt like I had spent too much of my life explaining or telling the real true story of what happened, because it just hurt my feelings so much that I would be reduced to a story that was not representative of who I am as a human being. And it felt very minimizing, and it never seemed to lose its teeth. It just was and I kept thinking, well, someday, maybe they'll notice that there's something else about me worth noticing or talking about, or I have other attributes or qualities that are me. And so I thought, let me just set the record straight. And I had written that part maybe 10 years ago. I started writing that part because it was this thing that I was just like, how can I how can I shed this? How can I shed this identity, which was not what people thought? And I thought, well, let me give it to them real, and explain what a horror it was, what a traumatizing event that took my career, took my ability to make a living, and took a turn in my life that I had no agency to undo, and I couldn't unring the bell, and I couldn't forget about it, and no one else seemed to forget about it. So I thought, here's everything you need to know, that everyone who knows me really well, who knew me then, who knows me now, they know everything, now you know everything too, and can we just put it to bed? It's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah. It was so interesting how you wrote that, when that happened, the public assumed that you had made that choice to get a nose job because you were unhappy with the way you looked.
Which was so insulting. I was like, excuse me, how dare you? I never felt that bad about myself.
So you didn't.
I was just like a normal girl who had insecurities about, how can I be more? Is there something that's unlovable about me, like we all have? I mean, I hope I'm not the only one. But the idea that there are things that we think need minimizing or pointing out, right? We want to magnify what's good and kind of look over here. And so I had this hair, I had this great head of hair, and I thought, as long as I have this hair and I have this energy, and I always felt beautiful, like really beautiful. No, but what I'm saying is I felt beautiful, but I noticed that I didn't look beautiful in pictures. As like I'd look at it and be like, that's not me. I feel like beauty is, I don't know, I just have always felt that. And yet I've always had things that are like, oh, I'm noticing the way you look at me, that you don't think I'm the lead. Oh, I'm the friend. Oh, I could feel in my casting that I remember.
Do you think that was real?
Oh, it was 100. I remember reading For Endless Love.
Okay.
And Franco Zeffirelli, it was a movie that ended up being Brooke Shields as a very young beauty. And I remember meeting with Franco Zeffirelli's, I think it was his boyfriend / assistant or whatever, who was doing preliminary casting. And he was Italian. I remember him looking at me, and I'd read the book, and I was obsessed with the book. I was like, I am this girl. This is my moment. I was sure of it, and I hadn't done anything. It was very, very early days. And I just said, this is my part. And he looked at me and he went, this is a beautiful girl. And I was like, seriously? I couldn't believe he said it. It was even worse than what I just said.
Oh my gosh.
It was like somebody took an anvil and dropped it on my head. Because when you see children and they just live, they just are being, they're not self-conscious, they don't think about what they look like, that's what I still had.
Yeah.
That was like the last shred of it. And then it was like, bam. And I was like, ow, and then I thought, well, that's because he doesn't know. He doesn't know. Okay, Zeffirelli, Romeo and Juliet, I guess he knows something. But that idea of he's not my audience, or he doesn't see what's beautiful about me. And I think that it's a very important, when you're in a business that's very focused on what you look like and how and what you represent, like for the collective unconscious, right? Like, what are you? Am I an archetype? I'm being cast as what people see or what they feel. And I noticed that I felt like the leading lady, or the ingenue, and I wasn't seen as such. And so I just started thinking, well, I'm going to show them. I will prove it, and I will not give myself up, because both of my parents had been actors in the 50s when everybody with the big nose and everybody Jewish, so it's not all the same.
Yeah.
If you were not Jewish and had a big nose, you got a nose job. If you were Marilyn Monroe, you got a nose job, you got a boob job, people did a lot of work to look the part of whatever was the trend at the time, right? And nobody ever said, Marilyn, that's not her real face, that's not her real, it just seemed to be, because it was after, she became famous afterwards.
Yeah.
my timing was all off, you see. But I was very committed to not doing what my parents did because it's kind of, I guess, like when dads wear boxers, they wear briefs. It's kind of like an individuating thing that I think can happen with kids, where you go like, you know what, I'm not going to be like you, I'm going to be like me.
Right.
And I'm going to show them what's beautiful. And then I got Dirty Dancing. I was like, see how I did it? Told you. And then I couldn't get work.
Why do you think that really was? Do you attribute it solely to the looks?
Do you see a lot of amazing leading roles for Jewish women played by Jewish actresses?
Well, that's been the whole discussion this year, right?
I
Sarah
don't know.
Silverman and a lot of
Let's talk about it. Okay, later we'll discuss. But the fact is that it's really hard to love oneself, I think, for everyone. I think everyone has different struggles about really accepting, radical acceptance of me, warts and all, me and what's great about me and not so great about me, and things that are getting better about me and things that'll never get better. Just like coming to grips and coming to that place of like self-love and not betraying yourself and not letting anyone treat you less. You know, like how what I would expect my friends to never accept.
Right.
Would I offer myself that same solidarity? Would I offer myself that same deep commitment to you deserve to be treated beautifully with care, you know, and to be able to walk away from anything that doesn't feel like that.
So when Dirty Dancing came out, you were at a really interesting point, as you write in the book, in your personal life, obviously in your career. This was like a huge moment for you. You're also in a relationship with Matthew Broderick at the time that's sort of tumultuous. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, we were young.
Right.
We weren't that young, but we were young. I mean, as far as I look now, we were very
How old
young.
were you?
Like early, mid-20s.
Right. And so
Yeah, I mean, that's young. That's early days, right? In terms of not really knowing who you are. And we're talking about like movie stars in their 20s who are, you know, talented and cool and handsome and funny and charming, and there's just, it's super magnetizing.
Right.
And we're all single, because that's what being young is about. It's just like, it's a kind of a free-for-all, right?
Right. Well, actually, let's go back for a second. When you write about your teenage life, so first of all, she's mentioned, obviously, her parents, Joel Grey, and your mom were in the industry.
Joe Wilder, right?
Joe Wilder. So you're like in the wings on Broadway as a kid, and then in New York, you're first of all moving between New York and Malibu as a teenager, which is like the coolest.
But Malibu was so funky then.
But it sounded cool. It was like you described it as this hippie.
Oh no,
like,
it was the coolest. It was the grooviest, coolest, funky, not bougie. It was cool.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was living like really great places because my dad was moving around from Broadway to doing cabaret, the movie, from the play cabaret to the movie cabaret in Germany, and then he's about to get an Academy Award, so he comes out here to be in the movies, and so we were just schlepped everywhere.
Yeah,
you know,
and then
young.
you're in New York, and you're going to studio, as you say, Studio 54, because like apparently no one calls it.
No, you call it studio, or you call it 54, but you didn't call it Studio 54.
Okay, so when you're like going to studio, and you know you're writing about, you're going out every night, you're like 16, you're doing drugs, your parents are like in entertainment, they're pretty open and not that strict in letting you go out and stuff. Like,
I guess not, because I was out.
did you feel like, I'm living the life, like I am cool?
Oh, I felt very powerful. I felt super powerful, and I knew that I was doing things that people my age weren't doing. And I'd always aspired to being older. I wanted to be older. I didn't like being a kid.
Yeah.
I didn't like being young. And I was mature for my age, but I was a kid. And so I was definitely, that was for me where I wanted, that was the sweet spot for me.
What did, I guess, maturing at a younger age or being exposed to some of that stuff teach you, do you think? Did you grow up sooner than you maybe wish you had, or was it just honestly awesome?
I mean, it was all of it. And
Yeah.
I say, as I write in the book, I was, you know, swimming in waters too deep, too dark for someone that age. It was too much for me.
Yeah.
But I wanted whatever that was. I was just hanging out with a very interesting crowd. I was hanging out with the Warhol gang, And, it was in high school, and I was, living with adult men and going to Studio 54, and, I thought I was the shit. Sorry, shit, I said it. Yeah, I just thought I was cool. And I was also putting myself in harm's way that I would never, ever want that for my kid. But it's not like my parents didn't care. They just didn't know, and I was a good kid. So I think it was probably surprising for them to read the book.
Well, yeah, and obviously, you alluded to there were some darker things going on at that time. You just did an interview recently with a colleague of mine, Yvonne, talking about, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, your own experience
It
as
was
a
that
teenager.
day. Yeah,
That
my
you did the
interview.
Yeah. And you told her about your own experience as a teenager and how thankful you were to be able to have that choice, right?
I mean, for anyone who's ever had an abortion, I don't think anybody thinks it's something to be taken lightly. It's a very heavy thing to do.
Yeah.
And thank God I had the option, because I was trying not to get pregnant, but I got pregnant. And a few times, and it was really, it's too much to have to deal with it, but it would have been much too much to have the children that I was carrying as a child myself, and I would not have had the life that I had, the career I had, and to have a daughter, much later, when I was 41, I had my daughter, and to have a daughter who was wanted, so wanted, and so loved, and to have no ambivalence about my work, what I had done enough, and all I wanted to do was be a mother. And I think that children deserve to come into a home where they're so wanted, and they are, and the parents, as imperfect as we all are, or at least I am, I don't know about you guys, but it's nothing I've wanted to do more perfectly in my life. And the perfection has eluded me, because it's not possible, but it's always been my priority. And to be able to be an adult, to make those choices is, I think, it's what I want for children, to be wanted and to be in a home where they can thrive and they can be their most, just like I'm so in love with my daughter, as you can tell, I just get all like, I don't know, I just get a little
Reclaimed.
Yeah, I just think it's such a beautiful thing to do mindfully. And, when you're young and super fertile, it just happens sometimes. And it happens, and that's it. That's all I'm going to say.
How do you your daughter's name's Stella, and as you said, you had her when you were with your husband then at the time, Clark Gregg. How did you talk to her about your teenage experiences? Like, being the daughter of baby is probably a whole thing for her. Like, does she think that you are the ultimate? Like, did you tell her candidly about all your studio days and everything?
I think it's all about timing.
Yeah.
I would never have told her before she was able to understand, because I didn't need to tell her, and I didn't need her to know or have the approval. But what I would do is when she became an adolescent and her friends, we would talk really openly about sexuality and crushes and just how different boys and girls can be, and just from my experience, not as if I speak for anybody or any genders, just the idea that I understood the crushing, and I understood where the crushing can take you, and that it's like to be self-protective. And so I would always talk about the things that I did, but never with shame, because I don't have shame about it.
Yeah.
I have so much compassion for the position I had put myself in and the vulnerable state that I'd put myself in that I couldn't handle. And to just let them understand that there's no shame in sexuality, there's no shame in having your body do what it does when you're that age, and to be mindful of your heart and your soul and what that means, and to make sure that you are self-protective first, and also appreciating whatever it is you're feeling, that there's nothing wrong.
I love how openly you write about sort of being, I think you put it like boy crazy, and just, you know, you were proud of your body, you were open about your sexuality when you were younger. And also just like the fact that you were engaged to Matthew Broderick and then Johnny Depp, I'm like, what is your life? That's so cool. But reading about your relationships, I was struck that you ended up with performers a lot of times. Do you think that there was a reason you gravitated towards people who were also in the same profession?
Okay, so let me ask you this.
Yeah.
When you read the book, did you notice that what I did was I wrote about my parents' childhoods, where their parents came from, what they were very deeply mired in showbiz, Broadway, musicals, performing, that it was just the family I was born into. And then I looked at the ways in which my parents' relationships and the way they were gravitating toward each other, and then I would not know why, but all of a sudden it just seems like I'm with actors. And if you look at the dynamics between my parents, as it was explained to me, as I saw modeled for me, I was doing I never said it outright, but the fact is I was looking at it almost like a scientist of course I would be, it's understandable. I was practically mimicking my parents' relationship. There were elements of my original caregivers that were coming, you know, just being recreated by what I was resonating with and what I was attracted to. And I think that it makes perfect sense.
It does. Can you explain a little bit about the dynamic that you write about between your mom and your dad, and that, you know, she started out also performing quite frequently, and as their relationship furthered, she took a step back a little bit?
My mom was a really talented actress, singer, less dancer, but musicals, and she did Gypsy, she played Gypsy Rose Lee. She was in Three Penny Opera. She played Polly Peachum at one point with Lotta Lenya, the original. I mean, like, she was really up and coming, and people always told me as I was growing up how talented she was. And so I knew that she had chops, and I knew that she had drive, and that she really wanted to have a big career.
Yeah.
She wanted to be Mary Martin, who was like her idol at the time. And I think that when she met my dad was already farther along. He had been performing since he was 9. He was a child actor, and then he was doing a lot of nightclubs, and he was more like Matthew was to me in terms of he was farther along on the trajectory, and he was a star.
Yeah.
My dad was a young star, Matthew was a young star, and talent has always been super powerful to me. Like, it's almost trumps everything. It's just in my DNA. I just like virtuosity. And so she was attracted to him, and he was super charming and was madly in love with her. And I think that she thought they would be like Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman or something. She thought they would be like
Power Hollywood couple.
Yeah, or Broadway, you know? And I think that she thought that's what would happen. And I think that he never wanted that. He wanted to have kids right away and wanted to have a family right away. And I think that, you know, I don't think every relationship is brokered in such direct terms. I think that there are people will have sometimes hidden hopes.
Yeah.
Or not really taking in 100% what the person's saying, or maybe the person's not really being that direct. And so it just happened that he really wanted someone to have kids. And then they had me, and all of a sudden they were on opposite ends of the country. And she was in a show on Broadway, and he was on tour with her, and so they were not together. And I think it was really hard, and she finally realized, okay, I guess we can't have two actors in this home.
Wow.
And so that's what happened. And I think it was very impactful to me growing up watching my mother, who I knew was talented and who would sing around the house and there were photographs of her in, costume all over the walls. And it was like this sadness that it was just, I could, kids can feel much more, I believe, more than whatever it is you tell them. They feel what is true, even if it's never spoken. And I felt her sadness, and I felt her depression, her feeling as if she had given up and betrayed herself and then I was the kid who was doing it. So I remember really feeling like, oh yeah, don't do that. Take door number 2. Do what he's doing, because he's just having this incredible experience. He's winning Tonys, he's winning Oscars. He's so talented, and we're going to Germany. He's working with Bob Fosse. I mean, he was just doing so well creatively and following his dream. And I thought, that is what I need to do if I have a kid, if I have a family. I won't get to have that.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you started out with, the dynamic you describe with Matthew in the book. As we were talking about, you were on the precipice of something really major with Dirty Dancing, and he was in his own world, and Ferris Bueller had just come out, and he didn't necessarily want to come to the premieres, or he was thinking about his own career and not supporting yours all the time. And then when you got married to Clark Gregg, you described a very completely different dynamic where you were so thankful that he was working as an actor and that
he was working as a screenwriter.
But later an actor, sorry.
I was done with actors. I was like, no more actors, no more actors.
And then he changed into one.
Well, he had been one previously, but it looked like he was pursuing a career as a screenwriter when I met him, and he'd written What Lies Beneath, and with Michelle Pfeiffer and Harrison Ford. I was like, oh yeah, he's a really good writer, super, super smart. And, he was already 39, 40, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm good, we're good. And then he just did New Adventures of Old Christine, and he all of a sudden was in the Marvel movies, and then I was with an actor.
Right. But you write so eloquently, I think, about how you were taken aback by how much the role of being a mom was something you embraced in a way you didn't know you even could.
Oh, I always knew.
You always knew?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not somebody to do something halfway. Okay. I mean, I wrote a book about myself with I don't know how I did this. It doesn't make any sense. I didn't go to school. I didn't ever write before. I wrote journals. But I tend to like to do things that are really, it's easier for me to do hard things. And I found that mothering was maybe not the easiest, but the thing that felt like it was just so where I wanted to be. I just loved being a mom. I loved stopping. The showbiz thing was so painful at that point. And I had given up on the idea that I would get my heart's desire.
What was your heart's desire?
I mean, I wanted to get all the juicy roles. I wanted to get all the great parts and be able to creatively feel gratified and super embodied. And it wasn't happening, and I couldn't make it happen. And so I thought, okay, this isn't, I want to be happy. I'd never wanted to be famous. When you were talking about my daughter, having, I never think of myself as famous or baby, or my daughter would never think of me like that. I mean, that's just not my identity. It's just a job I did, and it's what I love to do, and I do other things, but I really love being a mom.
Yeah.
I still, it's just, you can see, I get chemicals. I'm thinking, and I just love babies, and I just love watching her come into her own, and watching a photograph in the solution just coming, the image coming up, and just being I was so besotted.
So, but I mean, the truth is that so many people are attached to you because of this role, and it's pretty rare that there are only a few movies that people latch onto in the way they did with Dirty Dancing.
Oh, I agree. It's very unusual.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful. I think it's I take it very seriously, and I love that I was able to bring any of that to anybody. Certainly after all these years, that it still gives people a feeling that they crave or that they're comforted by. I mean, to me, it's if you're not going to, cure cancer, at least give people mitigate suffering to some degree, so that was my way.
Right. Do you think that, I mean, being identified with baby, for better or for worse, what are the things that, were there moments where you felt like, ugh, like you said, you didn't want to write the Dirty Dancing book, like that it's been a burden in any way?
No, I don't think of it ever as being a burden. I just knew that what people might want from me was nothing that I would be, I didn't want to write a tell-all, I didn't want to write about, I felt like what people want is dirt. And I have stuff that's juicy, because my book is truthful, but if anything, I'm pulling back because I am really trying my hardest just to tell my truth and not, I don't know, I had a distaste about the idea of exploiting anybody and hurting anybody is anathema to me, and so the idea that I could just tell my truth and have the courage to tell my story, regardless of how it would be received, was really, for me, the thing that made it one of the hardest things, aside from the fact that I can't write a sentence, you know.
Well, you've obviously proven that wrong.
I mean, I can write a sentence. When I write how I talk, and it's just not correct sometimes, but I get across what I want to get across.
So did you give any of the people you're talking about heads up this was coming out? Like, were you like, okay, you know, you guys are going to be mentioned in here and just want you to be ready?
I'm still best friends with Tracy Pollan.
Are you friends with Madonna still?
No, but I did send her an email, you know.
Okay.
But I mean, the people that are important to me, my family, and Maggie Wheeler, who's my best friend, who I write about in the beginning.
Janice from Friends.
Yes. Oh my God. Oh my God. And just the fact that I have the same friends forever, and the people who are my friends, I reached out to, but I wasn't gonna, like, you know, put like the stick in the beehive, wasp nest, like, because I just wanted to be able to. It was very hard to tell your truth. I don't know. I just found it to be in a public way, but I wanted to give myself. Like, I wanted to show myself that I could tolerate and withstand people's disapproval or dislike, because I knew that my aim was true. I wanted to give my daughter the most truthful user's manual for what it was, where she came from, so that in her life, that she would have as much information as there was to have. Because who knows how much of this she would take in now at 20.
Yeah.
And she said to me, I said, when do you want to read it? And she said, I want to read it. I want to wait till it's the hard copy, the real thing, because I want to annotate and underline, and I want to be able to give it to my kids.
Aw.
And that's my daughter. So she wants to know what happened, so that if anything in her life happens that's similar, or that she feels drawn to certain dynamics, she might see that there's a reason, or that there are things that happened before, so many things happened before she was born, that how hard it was to be an out-of-work actress. You know, she comes into the world when...
Because she wants to be an actress, right?
Yeah, I mean, her dad is working and I'm not working, and she never knew me as an actress or as a struggling actress. She saw me trying to get jobs from here, you know, once in a while, but it was like, she didn't understand how hard it was and how different the world was in terms of studying and the way the business was. It was the world, the life was different. Have you guys noticed that? It's so different.
And yet you're about to start working in a major way. You're going back to make a Dirty Dancing sequel, playing Baby again. It's exciting, yeah. So I think obviously people are probably questioning, how are you going to do this without Patrick Swayze, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Was that your big question before you signed on? Like,
oh, that's one of the couple of big questions.
Yeah.
I mean, why? Like, what's the point? And is there anything to tell that would be its own thing, not, you know, regurgitating or trying to recreate just a formula that had already happened because it happened, and to see what's there. And I've just never really been I wasn't down with it because I just couldn't see it. And then I thought, let's just see what there is. I mean, it's just when you say no, 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 then you're just sure that you know what you're going to get, no. But if you say, okay, let's see. Because there will never be another Patrick Swayze, and there will baby will never be a young virgin again, because that moment has happened. It's like the Joni Mitchell, like both sides now, you know? Like, it's just, things are different, life was different, you know, in the 90s, 30 years later, you know, from when it originally was filmed, and what happens? Like, is it over? Like, that first love, okay, does that mean you never get to have another unfolding? Do you never get to have another incarnation and another moment when you get to be reminded of who you are? It would be sad, wouldn't it? If all of that was just behind us. I don't believe that.
How do you think you're going to approach, or how do you think it will feel to embody that role when you were in your 20s versus now when you've learned all of the stuff you've written about in here?
I'm just curious because I know that I was 27 playing 17.
So
and I was not a virgin, and I was not, as you can read in the book, if you read the book, you'll say a lot of acting. And what I know, and then I was also, it was just, there were so many things that I was not actually that person, but I was that person. And the same way that who I am now is still that person, still that girl who wrote the journals, but so much has changed. And I think that it's important to acknowledge that there's life after first love.
Yeah.
There's life until we're gone, until we're dead. There's still the opportunity and the possibility of having a rebirth, of having a new relationship to identity or your worth or love or sexuality or yourself. And that there's always room for that until we're gone.
Yeah. Okay, I want to take a look at arguably the most iconic scene from the original Dirty Dancing. One you were very scared to do, the lift.
Oh, yeah.
You're the one thing I can't get enough of. So I'll tell you something. It's good to be loved because the time of my life, I never felt this way before. This I swear, it's so true, and I owe it all to you 'cause I had the time of my life, and I'm searched through every open door till I found the truth, and I owe it all to you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You have sheet music on this stuff?
I know you weren't the one who got Penny in trouble. Yeah. When I'm wrong, I say I'm wrong. It looks wonderful out there.
So fun. It's so weird to watch her up there and then just. So this is
It's
going to.
not weird for me at all.
Fun.
It's like watching home movies. It's just nice.
How many times have you seen that?
The movie?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't seek it out, but if I happen to see it, I'm like, oh.
So you don't even really like feel anything when it's on anymore?
Oh, I feel it. I remember every moment when I'm looking at it, and I remember, I had a very different experience than you would have watching it, and I just remember what it was actually like, and I just think about, like, time is moving on, and there's a lot of people that we just saw up there who are no longer with us, and all I keep thinking of is live, live, live.
Yeah.
Live, 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 man. We are here. It is not, it goes faster and faster as you get older, and then it just gets so good. And you think, God, I just want to get every juicy moment that's there for me.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Yeah.
Don't you feel like, it's just like there's so much joy, there's so much life to be lived. And it can be really daunting when you just get a little bogged down by all the heaviness and all the stress of life. And then you look at that, and that's why people love that movie. I think it's a reminder of connection and connecting to your highest self through the eyes of someone who sees you as more than you see yourself. And you see more in them than they see of themselves. And then this thing happens, this synergy, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, so final question before we open it up to everyone. You write about how scared you were to do that lift in the book. Is that going to be a part of the sequel? Would you ever do it again? You didn't do it on Dancing with the Stars, right?
I will never do it again.
Okay.
Why would I ever do it again?
You're like, I nailed it, we're done.
I did it, and Patrick was the only person I would have ever trusted to do that with me, and I could barely trust him to do it, and once I did it with him, I was like, oh yeah, that was the right person, and I would never, ever dream of doing any of that with anybody else.
There you go. All right, well, let's bring out Donna. We'll open it up to the audience.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to you both. That was so much fun. Really wonderful. Well, thank you. We've had quite a few questions have come in from our audience, and we can't get to all of them, but based on what we just saw, it seemed like a good time to maybe just do a little quick lightning round with some Dirty Dancing memories. So this one comes from Carrington, who's in the audience here tonight, and he said, what's your fondest memory from filming Dirty Dancing?
It has to be lightning, right? Fondest memory. My fondest memory was rehearsing before we started filming, and I was learning how to do the mambo, and I was learning the basics of partner dancing, and Kenny Ortega was teaching me, and Miranda Garrison was teaching Patrick, and we would just be in this open barn in Virginia, and we would just be spending the days learning how to dance like that. And we'd rehearse in the afternoons, they'd go through the script. And to me, I love rehearsal, and I love learning something new, so.
Thank you. This one comes from Gerald, and he wants to know, okay, just pick one. What's your favorite scene, Dirty Dancing? Is there one?
No, I don't have a favorite.
Okay.
I have like so many that if I have to pick one, there's too many. And I just feel like whenever Patrick and I were, like when I was in the water with him, is so horrible because it was so cold and it was hell, but the way we cleaved together and the way he was taking care of me, and we were both very, very in dangerously cold water, but the idea of somebody just not being alone when it was so hard and so scary, that he was there with me.
Our next question comes from Robert, and he would like to know what artists and style of music are helping you move your feet in 2022?
I mean, I was listening to a lot of Joni Mitchell today because of that Newport Folk Festival. It just was really taking me back. So I really love Frank Ocean, but I love Hector Lavoe. I love dancing to old Latin music, and I just love, I don't know, I love everything. I don't have anyone in particular that's like my thing, but.
Thank you.
Not that great an answer, sorry.
I got to say that Joni Mitchell, I mean, who isn't like reveling in Joni Mitchell this week? So really pretty amazing. This question came in for Amy, but I put it out to both of you. Amy's a pretty big deal. If you any of you readers read her stories, she's one of our most amazing entertainment writers, and she's also the author of a best-selling book herself. And so this question.
What book? Tell us what book.
Oh, Bachelor Nation. I mentioned it at the beginning, but I'll mention it again. So this question came in for Amy. What do you think about the current season of The Bachelorette with 2 bachelorettes?
You don't watch reality TV, right? She writes that in the book. Dancing with the Stars was the first thing, but Dancing with the Stars is on right around the time of Bachelor and Bachelorette. I don't love the current season where they have 2 bachelorettes because ABC has been sort of promoting it as like, we won't pit 2 women against each other. It's going to be...
Wait, is it a lesbian thing?
No, it's like...
that sounded interesting.
I know, no. We're not even there yet, but they basically had 2 women prospects from the last season that they liked, and so they said, okay, we'll give them both a chance to be the Bachelorette, but they put just a big pool of guys, and so the guys have to choose which one they like better, and so it kind of becomes like, it's not female empowerment.
I don't care for that.
Yeah, no, I don't either.
Okay.
So no, not a fan so far. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Inquiring minds wanted to know, so I had to come out. I had to come out with it. This one back to Jennifer. Why do you think comes from Sophia? And she wants to know, why do you think that Dirty Dancing still resonates with younger generations so strongly?
I think because it's very much the formula of a fairy tale, of the idea of there's somebody, whether it's Cinderella or Baby, it's somebody who feels invisible and feels like they are not the cool girl, they're not the beauty, they're not the shiny object in class or in their family, they're not walking around in the world where the world's their oyster, and they feel like, that they don't matter, or they don't count, or they don't have what it takes. And I think the idea that this person has decided what her best thing is, which is she's going to be smart and do the Peace Corps thing because boys will never like her, and then she's in this situation where the hunkiest, most gorgeous guy begrudgingly is forced to be with her and annoyed by her, and then something happens. And that someone can see that you're more than what you thought they could see. And through their eyes, you realize, oh, I am more, but so is he. And that idea that there is transformation and power in our ability to morph into other versions and iterations of ourselves. That where this is not it. Like, there's more.
Sounds like Franco Zeffirelli needs to bone up on the themes of Dirty Dancing after that.
I just think I think it feels good to feel there's hope.
So that's why everyone in the audience is watching it on repeat. You weren't out here before, but I started at the beginning asking people how many times they had seen the movie, and there was quite a few hands up for every single number as they got higher. So. And this will be the final question. I know we had so many, but we want to get to the book signing. So this last question is, you've been working this one comes from Amanda, and she says, you've been working in Hollywood for some time, but is there something or some role you still want to try?
I don't have that kind of, I've never I want to play Lady Macbeth, or like Medea. No, I just want to work with great, smart, interesting filmmakers and actors and writers.
Well, I want to thank you both for being here. This was so much fun tonight.
Thank you all for coming out.
And I want to thank our hosts here at the Montalban. I want to thank our independent bookseller partner. Every book club event, we try to share the love around, and tonight our partner is Diesel. And so I wanted to do a shout out to Diesel Books. And to thank our amazing events team as we've been tiptoeing back out into the world, trying to figure out a mix of how we can do in-person and virtual events, make them fun and safe. And so I'm just very grateful to work with such talented, flexible, and creative colleagues who helped put this event on tonight. And finally, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us here in Hollywood and from home, and say good night, everyone. We'll see you next month.
Thank you so much.